The Stafer electronic motor model RX.E can be controlled either only by radio transmitter or by both radio transmitter and a wall-mounted push-button switch. In case you would like to control it only by radio transmitter, you need to connect only the blue wire, the brown wire and the ground. In this case, the black wire and the gray wire are not to be connected to anything. In case you would also like to use a push button, you need to connect all the wires in this way. After mounting the motor and fastening the rolling shutter, proceed as follows. Remember that each operation can be done with the 594TX radio transmitter with the 593TX100 simple radio transmitter or, if present, by push-button switch. Installing an RX.E motor with the 594TX radio transmitter. First off, the power supply must be switched off and then on again. Within 15 seconds, press briefly prog on the back, pointing towards the motor. Briefly press up. If the rolling shutter moves in the opposite direction, that is downwards, press prog and right away up again. Move the rolling shutter to an intermediate position. Before pressing stop 3 times, you should know that immediately after pressing the button, the motor, by making some movements, will ask you what type of application you are in. In this case, since you have a rolling shutter, you should know that you need to press stop immediately after the first movement. Then, returning to the previous step, press stop 3 times. Wait for a movement to assign rolling shutter and press stop immediately afterwards. The rolling shutter moves alone to the lower limit switch. You need to stop it by pressing stop. Immediately afterwards, the rolling shutter starts ascending and you will stop it at the upper limit switch by pressing stop, or, in case there are stoppers, you can let it move until it stops automatically. The procedure being over, the motor makes 2 movements. Finished. If by any chance the position of the limit switches is not exactly the desired one, don't worry, because it can be recalibrated at a later time with the appropriate function. Fine adjustment of the upper limit switch. If the position of the upper limit switch has been acquired by contact with stoppers, it cannot be adjusted manually. In case, on the contrary, you have defined the position of the limit switch by a radio transmitter, it can be modified in this way. Move the rolling shutter to the upper limit switch. Press the stop, prog, up button sequence. The motor moves downwards and immediately afterwards you can adjust to the new position. When finished, press prog. Finished. Fine adjustment of the lower limit switch. Move the rolling shutter to the lower limit switch. Press the stop, prog, down button sequence. The motor moves upwards and immediately afterwards you can adjust to the new position. When finished, press prog. Finished. SLAT tilting function, that is, micro-moving the motor in small twitches. This function is very useful in lower rolling shutters, because it allows, with the appropriate buttons, to tilt the slats according to your needs or to precisely adjust the shutter. This function is deactivated as a factory setting and it is therefore set to level 1. Our advice is to activate it at level 2, that is with very small and precise movements. Move the shutter to an intermediate position. Press the menu button on the back of the radio transmitter for 5 seconds until RS appears on the display. Press channel minus once and channel plus twice to dial the number 12, which is the number of the function. Press stop. The motor signals the current value, that is 1 disabled. Press channel plus twice to define level 2. It may be possible to set up to level 5, but the micro movements would be wider. Now press stop and the rolling shutter will signal the new value with small movements, in this case 2. Third limit switch function. The third limit switch is very useful in lower rolling shutters. We need to point out that in this model of motor, the lower limit switch means the position where the rolling shutter is completely lowered with the slats open. The third limit switch position is, on the contrary, where the rolling shutter is lowered with the slats closed for darkness. Setting it is very simple. Move the rolling shutters to the desired position, possibly with the aid of micro movements for greater precision. Once the position has been found, you need to simply hold down the stop button and the third limit switch button at the same time for a few seconds until the rolling shutter moves. Finished. At this point, try to move the rolling shutter and recall the third limit switch. If you are not satisfied with it, simply move back to a new position and repeat the procedure. Changing the push button switch logic. As per the factory settings, immediately after the motor has been installed, the push button switch always operates in pulse mode. That is, you just need to briefly press it once and the motor moves to the limit position. To stop this operation, you just need to briefly press any one of the two buttons. However, it is possible, using function number 18, to change the logic of the push button switch, transforming it into manned mode. In this case, you need to keep the button pressed with your finger, and as soon as you leave it, the motor stops. To turn the button into manned mode, first move the shutter to an intermediate position. Press the menu button on the back of the radio transmitter for 5 seconds until RS appears on the display. Press channel minus once and channel plus 8 times to dial the number 18, which is the number of the function. Press stop. The motor signals the current value, that is once down for pulse mode. To select manned mode, press channel plus. To return to pulse mode, press channel minus. At this point, press stop, and the rolling shutter will signal the new value with a small upward movement for the manned mode, or one downward movement for the pulse mode. Finished. Cloning of radio transmitters. After associating a radio transmitter to a motor, it is possible to clone it on other radio transmitters of the same type or of a different type, so that all the radio transmitters can operate the same rolling shutter. It is essential that the radio transmitters are Stafer branded and have the same frequency. Cloning is very simple. Just stand in front of a rolling shutter with the associated radio transmitter already working, select the corresponding channel if necessary, and press the prog button on the back of the radio transmitter until the rolling shutter makes a small movement. Now, release the prog button, take the new radio transmitter with the empty memory and press stop. The rolling shutter makes 2 small movements, and from now on, both radio transmitters will operate it. Of course, it is also possible to clone a model 593TX100 radio transmitter that has already been memorized by pressing the hidden prog button on its back, and, after a rolling shutter has made one movement, by pressing the stop button on any other radio transmitter. You can also delete one of the cloned radio transmitter. Simply carry out the same cloning procedure and the previously working radio transmitter will be deleted. Cloning between any of the Stafer radio devices is possible. Reset to factory settings. Reset by radio transmitter. It is possible to reset by radio transmitter both the motors with built-in radio receiver RX2 and the electronic motors RX.E. Move the rolling shutters to an intermediate position. With the 594 radio transmitter, press and hold the menu button for 5 seconds until RS appears on the display. Now press channel minus twice and channel plus 9 times until you have dialed the number 29 on the display. Press stop. The display flashes and the motor makes 8 double movements. Wait for the rolling shutter to stop and then immediately press channel plus and channel minus at the same time for a few seconds until the rolling shutter makes a double movement. The reset is now complete. With the 593TX100 simple radio transmitter, there is a similar procedure. Move the rolling shutter to an intermediate position. While holding down the stop button, press prog on the back of the radio transmitter for about 1 second until the blue LED is solidly lit. Press up twice and down 9 times. Press stop. The display flashes and the motor makes 8 double movements. Wait for the rolling shutter to stop and press up and down at the same time until it makes a double movement. The reset is now complete.